Just Fix It in Post is fueled by the donut. So the donut, the chocolate's amazing, right? Dude, the container's literally super fudge.
You like cake or you like yeast?
I like this kind. A cake to me, I'm not a cake person.
There's cake, right?
No, I just yeast.
What's this?
Cake, chocolate cake.
The yeast are like the Krispy Kreme.
Yeah.
Those aren't good. These are much better. Much better.
Whether you're law enforcement doubling down on tradition, a multitasking parent seeking some sweet silence, or a producer looking for a morale boost on set, get The Donut. For the sweetest updates, you can follow them on Instagram at The Donut San Pedro. Located at 1615 South Daffy Street, 562-881-0656. Get The Donut. Serving San Pedro for the last 45 years. The Donut. Damn, that's good. Just Fix It in Post.
Okay, this is a career.
Things like creative directors and approach.
Wow.
Fucking A. I am absolutely there.
Clients wanting more for less.
Dude.
This mix of creativity and technology.
We've heard around the world. People were freaking out.
Welcome to Just Fix It in Post. Industry insights straight from the source. I'm your host, Sean Rice, and welcome. If you've ever wondered what it takes to drive success in digital advertising, you're about to find out. As the Chief Revenue Officer for PubMatic, this guest is a leader who's mastered the art of building strategic alliances, driving business growth, and staying ahead in a fast-paced world of programmatic advertising. With over a decade at PubMatic and accolades from his time at Synthetic, he's as sharp with strategy as he is with revenue. Let's dive into the digital with Kyle Dozeman.
Hello.
The intro's fire.
I can't believe this is happening. How long has it been? 6 years, 7 years, 8?
Since we last saw each other?
I mean, I think it was like a giant lobster, about an 8-pound or 5.
Dude, I forgot about that.
I have photos.
I forgot about that.
That was crazy.
That was when we hung out last.
Yes.
You ordered like a 12-pound lobster when all you needed to order was a 1 pound.
Back before inflation, it was like $120. It was a steal back then.
I think me and our friend got like half-pound lobsters. You got a 12-pounder.
Yeah, I had to, do it. I'd lost all that weight while I got married, so.
We look good now.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it.
Even after all the donuts.
Bro. So, you're the CRO of PubMatic.
It's true.
So, programmatic advertising. Tell our viewers what that is exactly. People work in advertising marketing. It's kind of it's either the A or the B.
Wait, what are the A's and the B's?
Well, you've got social.
Yeah.
And, where that world is. And then you have everything else.
For a really long period of time, advertisers bought publishers as a proxy for audiences, right? You'd buy the Super Bowl because you wanted to hit a certain consumer segment, or you bought a certain newspaper. But in that model, that left a lot of potential waste, right? Is it likely that most people that read a specific newspaper may want to buy a beer or specific product? Like, probably. Is it the case that every single person that reads that newspaper wants to buy that product? Definitely not. But that was all that was possible before digital, right? Like, it was impossible for a newspaper company to print a different ad for each household and get that in the printing press and get that delivered, let alone know who was in each of those households. And so with the rise of digital, it became possible that you could show ads uniquely to specific individuals on specific web pages. So programmatic is the technology that undergirds that happening in the real world. So now when you log on to your connected television, or you log onto your phone, or you log on to anything, the technology will share that ad in real time with millions of advertisers and figure out which advertiser and which publisher advertising moment to connect in real time. So that's sort of what programmatic is, and that in theory creates a tremendously more efficient ecosystem for everybody, right? Like, removing that waste should be good for the publisher, should be good for the consumer. They're watching ads that they want to be watching. It should be good for the advertiser. And it's possible, over the last 20 years as everything's become digitized.
How does somebody who becomes a college grad find themselves at a company like PubMatic? What was kind of your process in terms of, they started in 2006? That was kind of the beginning of?
2006.
2006. And when did you enter the picture?
Good question. 2013, I believe.
Okay.
So I am not an advertiser or a marketer. I never studied either of those domains. I went to school for technology. So I studied statistics, I studied programming. I went straight into technology, like wanted to go to Silicon Valley and be a part of that. I worked in software as a service, so SaaS and cloud applications. When everything was sort of moving from on-prem to into the cloud, I tried to ride that wave for a little bit, had a good time doing that. And then a manager of mine at the time was leaving the company that I was at. And he said, hey, a friend of mine started an ad tech company. He and Rajiv, my now CEO, had started a golf e-commerce company when they were, 18 in college. And he said, hey, my buddy Rajiv started an ad tech company. He needs help. You should go talk to him. So I said, sounds good. So I went and interviewed. And I remember in the interview, they used a bunch of terms that I'd never heard of. I remember him saying CPM, and I was like, what are you saying? I was very clear with him, and he said, look, I just need like a chief of staff, like follow me around, keep me organized, help me with projects as I need them. You don't need to know anything about advertising. I'll teach you that. I said, sounds good. It was interesting. At the time, I was considering doing that or going back to get an MBA. And he made the argument. He said, come here for 2 years. It'll be the best MBA you ever get. I don't know whether he was right or wrong, but I said, I'll take that chance. I'll get paid to get an MBA. And that's what I did.
What did you major in and where did you go to school? I mean, what was kind of the dream growing up? I mean, where did you want to end up? What did you want to do?
I never had a dream. I'm not one of those people that, like, since I was born, knew what I wanted to do. I grew up in Denver, Colorado. The number one thing that I wanted to accomplish with college was leave Colorado. I wanted to go to California, but that was because I wanted to be on the beach. I wanted to surf. I wanted to do all of that. And my dad made a deal with me. He said, I'm only going to send you to California if you can get a degree there that is better than any degree you can get within Colorado. And so I sort of looked at that, the math of that. The degrees that you could get that were clearly better in California were computer science degrees. So that's what I applied for. I went there. And I enjoyed technology. Like I thought that was fun, but it's not like I was passionate about programming or computers or anything like that. And I just sort of stayed in that. Largely since then have just sort of followed a random walk and it's led me here.
So you've literally fallen into success, basically, is what you're kind of broadly telling me in terms of opportunities presented itself and you capitalized on those opportunities.
Depends how you define success, Sean.
Do you feel successful?
In some regards, I do. In others, I think there's a lot left to be done.
What defines success for you?
I don't know if I have like a super crisp answer for you on that. I think I've done well at taking advantage of opportunities as they've come. I'm proud of some of the skills I built along the way. Like I think I've done a really good job of learning how to think and learning how to get work done, which I think a lot of people aren't good at. But I think there's still more I want to do in terms of building things that I've created, wrapping my arms around like what work-life balance is, what is, happiness, capital H happiness, like all of those things.
You're at a place where you have an opportunity to basically kind of fall forward. Really, unless the company doesn't work out, other than that, I mean, you're scaling up, you're trying to gather more business. What's sort of your objective as a CRO? Were you brought in as a CRO or you kind of worked your way up from?
I was not brought in as CRO. So yeah, so you made an interesting point there. One thing I learned, the previous company I was at, the growth in that sector was like 2 to 4% year on year. If we announced earnings and it was 3 to 5% year on year growth, we were beating expectations.
Interesting.
I recognized pretty quickly that the growth level of the industry and the company very much impact how much opportunity becomes available to the average person working at that company. I had a few criteria when I left that first job, and one of them is I wanted to be in an industry that was growing 20% or more year on year, because my assumption was it would just, the amount of opportunity or responsibility that would come up for grabs for somebody on a day-to-day basis would be great. And I think that was absolutely the case. So I do very much believe, and this is a weird comment because it's not very like self-empowering, but I do believe that like industry trumps company trumps personal performance to some degree, right? Like the most talented employee in a bad industry or a bad company is going to be severely restricted, and relatively mediocre performing employees can do extremely well at very well-performing industries or well-performing companies. So I think that's like one thing I learned along the way. But when I joined PubMatic, it was pretty small. Like it was a startup. And so I got a little bit lucky that I landed at a company that ended up doing well. Perhaps I contributed slightly to that success, but I think it was much bigger than me. It was definitely not like a foregone conclusion that it would be successful. And in that chaos, like a lot of opportunity emerged for me to take on things that I think probably people more talented than I would have gotten at bigger companies. So being in that sort of rough and tumble startup phase, I think allowed me to get advantages or responsibility that I wouldn't have gotten had I taken a job at a Fortune 200 or a major tech company or something like that.
Quarter to quarter, what are your your overall objective? What's your goal? When you wake up, you go to work, you check your email. What's your checklist of things that you need to make sure you're objecting on like a daily and then also like, on a quarterly objective?
So revenue is obviously in the title. So that's like the number one metric. PubMatic is a marketplace. So similar to an Amazon or an eBay, we got clients that are selling things on the marketplace and we got clients that are buying things. So on one side, we got publishers, which again is as broad of set of companies as it's ever been. It's ranging from connected television companies, streaming companies, gaming apps, digital out-of-home billboards, like anything that's connected to the internet. We've got that set of clients on one side connecting into our technology to make their advertising inventory available. And then on the other side, we have to run around talking to advertisers, agencies, anyone looking to buy advertising and have them connect into our marketplace from a buying standpoint. So my job is to make sure that that marketplace is as liquid and being as participated in as it possibly can be. And so I have to talk to publishers and say, here's why you should make your inventory available on PubMatic, and here's why it's uniquely advantageous versus other places you can put it, Google, Facebook, things like that. And then same thing on the buy side, going to ad agencies and saying, here's why you should buy more digital advertising, and within that, here's why you should buy this type of advertising, here's why you should buy on our platform, etc. So most of my day is organized around connecting with that set of customers, the team that manages those customers, and also trying to look forward to look at the industry dynamics to figure out what might throw us off course and make sure we're like strategically set up to adjust for that.
In the ad tech industry, there's probably from what I read, about 48,000 companies that are kind of working within that space globally. It's probably true. And then I think Trade Desk is one of the big players, as well as Google. What are the metrics that you're looking at in order to set yourself apart from them? And then also, obviously, you guys grew in 2006 to where you are today. What has kind of propelled you to kind of keep that, say, 4 to 7 to 20 to 22% year over year return on that investment to be able to grow? What's been the key to that?
Good question. So in terms of the client base, so one interesting comment. So Trade Desk and Google are both clients of ours. So both of those companies buy on PubMatic. And then Google also runs a part of their business is competitive to our business. It is true very broadly that in ad tech, it's co-opetition at the max. Like every company competes and partners to some degree. So calling that out as a nuance there. In terms of what's driven our success, probably innovation is first and foremost. Like it's a very fast moving space. Things change every couple of months. That was another thing that I learned when I moved out of cloud and software as a service and into advertising. Like the business cycles are like months. At my previous company, we would release a product. 9 months later, customers would start using it. 2 years later, you'd have mass deployment and you'd start to get real scaled feedback about that product. And then you could say, oh, we need to adjust our strategy in this way or that way. At PubMatic, we put a strategy or a product out, and within weeks, we've got tremendous amounts of feedback as to how it's going. And then just the pace of change within the industry, all of the things that you talk about on this pod, change the entire game constantly. And so I think a lot of what we've done well is just like endlessly stay nimble, be willing to move past ideas, never be too proud of something for too long. And so I think we've set up our company and the way that our company structures to be as nimble as they come within the ecosystem.
When a client comes to you, and I know currently we have a lot of like automotive, I would say is probably the bigger audience. So say a company like Toyota comes to you and they want, they're launching a vehicle. They've created a bunch of ads. What's sort of the process that they would go through in order to be able to get that ad in front of the right people? I mean, you guys are looking at what, like anywhere from like a 0.8 to 3% conversion rate in terms of ad spend to sales. Is that, am I crazy?
I don't have a great answer for you on that, and here's why. So let's answer your first question first. A automotive or any advertiser, step one would be that they would work with their in-house team or their agency to develop a campaign and a strategy. Back to the start of the pod when I said I know nothing about advertising or marketing, like this is kind of what I mean. I'm on the other end of the ecosystem. So that's a process that we're generally not deeply involved in. So they'll say, we're launching this new product. Our goals are X, Y, and Z. The agency will say, sort of, here's the different tactics, and let's plan out the next year or the next campaign in this way. They will then take that campaign and set it up within a buy-side platform, which is like a Trade Desk or a Google. So they will log in and they will set the digital campaign up in that platform. And that'll have the details of like, we want to buy these properties at this time. We want to achieve these objectives. And then our system's job is to make all of that inventory and all of those publishers connect into that system. So we send what we call bid requests. So basically,
That'll be next, but yes, we'll dive into RTBs soon.
okay, we'll get into RTBs, but we basically send requests to those systems to say, hey, Sean just logged into his connected TV. Would you like to show him an ad? So that's sort of our job in the ecosystem, is to make those requests available and make sure that those requests have as much information available as they possibly can so that those systems can assess whether that's a good buying opportunity for them. And then the campaign will execute based off of what we make available to it. While we spend a lot of time talking to advertisers and agencies, it's more of a technology conversation from our perspective than a advertising or marketing conversation.
I'm assuming like a chief sales officer in terms of somebody who's overseeing all of sales. Are they selling packages to a company like Toyota? Are they selling options? Like what is it that they're using to lure in, and then what are their options? Granted, we'll dive into the RTB aspect of it. What's kind of the shiny object that they're, rather than just doing full on media buys, I guess going through a company like PubMatic, they have a 40 to 60% better chance of getting visibility as opposed to just doing direct media buys.
Let's pull that apart a little bit. So one way they could buy that media would be to call that publisher and execute what is known as a insertion order. This is how advertising was bought for the last 150 years. So that advertiser could pick up the phone, call that publisher and say, like, what you got coming up? I'd like to reserve some of that. And the publisher could say, sounds good, and sort of set that up. That is not what we do. So we would compete with that part of the ecosystem or that way of transacting. So our style of transacting, it transacts in real time. So to get to the second part of your question, like what are the different things that we make available to those clients? The first one is what we would call open market. Literally, as people like yourself, consumers, are getting on the internet, those opportunities become available and we send them to their technology systems so that they can buy them. In a general sense, that would be like going to the shopping market, like the products are there and you can sort of help yourself to them as you see fit. The most basic way to interact with PubMatic as if you're an advertiser. And then you can step into more advanced products from there. And these would be sort of the packages or the curated opportunities. So you could say, hey, there's a big upcoming live TV event, and I know that it's probably going to be oversold, so I probably won't be able to get those opportunities if I just walk into the store. I need to reserve them so that I know that I have them, and I know I want to reserve them because they're really important for my campaign, and that's what I want to do. There's different ways in the systems that you can sort of reserve inventory or help make sure there's more kind of contextual alignment or more this or that. So there's all sorts of like fine tuning of the system that you can do. And so you sort of just build up from that open market using those products.
In terms of 40 to 60% visibility of the ads through programmatic advertising compared to regular traditional media buys, you also have the conversion rate. You're looking at 1 to 3%, and then kind of on the higher end for like, beauty, fashion, cosmetics. When you scale down the asset purchase, you're looking at kind of better numbers in terms of turnover for spend to sales. And you're able to track all of that through all of the information that you're providing when someone comes to advertise through your particular, you guys strictly work on like a horizontal business? Or are you reaching out to like other companies like Google or Trade Desk? How does scale work for you?
We're horizontal in the sense that there are not a lot of verticalized marketplaces in the sense that there's like a health marketplace or a sports marketplace. So we connect, like PubMatic connects with the vast majority of publishers globally across all sort of like platforms, formats, channels. So we're horizontal in that sense. And then I think part of what you're poking on with your question is if we compare sort of that insertion order or the legacy way that a lot of media was transacted. Basically, programmatic is just setting out to reduce and clean up that denominator, right? So you're going to show X number of ads to a certain number of people. And if you do it with an insertion order, you're basically, it's back to sort of taking out a page in the newspaper. So everybody that picks up that newspaper that morning are going to see that ad. A bunch of those people probably have no interest in that product. But now that we're in the digital age, we can sort of say, oh, based off of a bunch of data available on the internet, we think we know that 40% that probably aren't interested in your advertisement, and we can remove that out. And so it's just a much more efficient system, which I think is kind of the why behind the metrics that you're citing of like, how is this so much better than some of those legacy ways of buying? Just like removing out all of that waste or those sort of like missed connections.
Real-time bidding. So this is, I feel like people have no idea the scale in which this is happening. From the research I've done, I believe this happens all in about a 3-second timestamp in terms of all the variable options that they would have for an ad, or what it would look like from copy to video to probably demographic, all those particular options. And then at the same time that that's happening, you're also offering up bidding on those particular eyeballs in order to get those transactions. And this all happens in a 3-second window?
I think much less. Like
a 0.3 second.
Yeah, like milliseconds.
Milliseconds.
Yeah, so the campaign would get set up in advance, right? Like you want to target these types of people or these types of properties or whatever. So that's sort of set up in advance. But then the system is receiving trillions of bid requests. Again, which is just the industry term for opportunity to show somebody an ad. There are trillions of those a day. Think about all the time we all spend on our computers, our TVs, our phones. Those are sent from your phone or your TV to those systems. A auction is run across millions of advertisers who put in their bids to say, oh, I'd like to show Sean an ad in this moment. That makes sense for my brand, or I'll pass on this one. And they put in literally a bid. So it's not just a yes or no, but they say, in this moment, Sean is worth this much money to me. If it's more than that, I don't want it. And they will submit their bids. It will run an auction. It will determine a winner. The creative from that advertiser is then transferred onto the web page. And all of that happens as the web page is loading, which is milliseconds, instantaneous. Your eyes wouldn't even notice at this point. That's happening behind every web page you load, multiple spots on the web page, constantly, trillions of times a day, globally.
So I think even though the data is anonymous, right? It legally has to be anonymous. The information that you're gathering. In a world where authenticity is like everything these days, the fact that people are bidding on my eyeballs, granted, this stuff is regulated, right? Like there are rules. You have the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR, and then the CCPA for California Consumer Privacy Act, right? You have all these stuff.
The legal aspect of it is like complicated in every country, and everybody thinks about it differently. I think we just like step back for a moment. There is an inherent trade-off of value that I think we all can or cannot make with the internet at large. When Google started sending you notifications, hey, this band that you like has a show near you, do you want to go? Or this chef just opened a restaurant and it has an opening like 2 blocks from your place, do you want to go? For me personally, that exchange of value, like I want that. And that's like a personal Kyle Dozeman comment. Like,
right, of course.
Take some of my information and like make me more productive and make me useful. So I think that sort of exchange of value is a broader sort of internet-based question, which is true here as well. So I think the trade-off is basically like, do you want to remove all of that information about you, clean it from the internet, which there are totally ways to do, and then you're going to have a different experience. But generally speaking, like Ford or Toyota or Budweiser are not in the business of trying to figure out that you are Sean Rice. They're just in the business of trying to figure out that you're a good-looking, healthy young man who likes to drink a Budweiser on the weekend when watching sports.
Right. But at the same time, but this goes to the people that are doing it, following the rules and regulations, right? It's a bit of the Wild West out there because you can't visually see what's happening. I have no idea what's going on. I don't know what other companies are doing or how they're gathering their information. But even though they say that it's not happening, When I did a podcast with Anna Dixon, the VP of Shutterstock, and the next thing you know, she's talking about Envato, we have a conversation, literally go to upload the episode on YouTube and all of the ads are Envato on there. I haven't typed Envato in, I've been on their website just from that conversation. So that to me isn't anonymous.
Google specifically also has a crazy amount of data on you. They have so many touch points, and they do, like, I'm neither pro or con Google. Like, I think they generally try to use that to give you a better consumer experience. You have to decide whether that value exchange is worth it for you. Again, there are ways, like you can log into all these systems and remove your cookies and remove your data.
And Apple gives you that option on your phone all the time.
Exactly. Generally, what I found is when I've gone that route, I kind of end up coming back and saying, that made my user experience worse. I find the value exchange to be reasonable, but everybody has to decide that for themselves, I think.
At what point did RTB kind of enter into the marketplace? When did it go from media buys into instantaneously auctioning off space or viewers?
I'm not like a ad tech historian, but I believe around 2009. The companies that are big in real-time bidding today were all founded like 2006, 2007, 2008. It was being invented and sort of launched around 2009, and it's been evolving fast and furious since. And it started on computers for display ads and evolved into applications on your phone and evolved into connected televisions, and targeting's evolved and data has evolved, and that's sort of what the last 10 to 15 years have been about.
Does that data end up going back to the advertiser? Are they taking that information then back to their house to then figure out how they're going to create content against that to better perform on with their media buy with you, or how does that work?
Absolutely. And as best they can. And again, this is the part of the ecosystem that I'm not deeply involved in, but as they collect as many sort of data points as they possibly can. Was the ad on the screen in view? Did somebody click on it? Like any metric that they can get about the behavior of the consumer around the ad experience, and not just that one ad experience, but the journey of that consumer over a multitude of ad experiences that try to persuade them to take some action. The advertisers and the technology companies that they work with collect all that data to paint that picture of effectiveness, ROI, attribution, and that's kind of like the holy grail of what digital has been trying to chip away at. You know, if you see a billboard on the street driving into Palm Springs, like it's really hard to measure whether that impacted somebody. As things turn digital, you get better and better signals to sort of paint that picture.
There's ad-supported streaming now. Is that a world you play in, or is that outside of your wheelhouse? Like, is social media part of what you do, or is that like, does that play into? Because it's all, like you said, digital. So I'm not sure what your territory is.
I think the way to think about it is we're interested in bringing any digital inventory into our platform that exists in the world that's high quality, that our advertisers are looking for. And the only reasons we wouldn't do that are, one, the technology doesn't exist yet. Streaming, RTB was not integrated into streaming and connected TVs 8 years ago. It is now. So that would be reason one. And the other reason is what we call a walled garden. And that's a major company that has a platform that consumers use that they own the full vertical supply chain. So that is, like, Facebook is a good example of that. Facebook, if you log into Facebook or Instagram or any of their properties, we and the rest of the open internet, is what we call ourselves, cannot get access to that ad inventory. The only way you can buy Facebook inventory is if you log into the Facebook ad buying platform. Similar to Google, like you can't buy YouTube unless you log into Google. And so that's what the term walled garden means, is they've walled it off and said, we're not allowing interoperability with anybody else. And they use that to try to force advertisers to have to use multiple layers of their technology.
So do Facebook and say, TikTok and those places, do they sell into you guys then? Like, are they offering up packages where they end up, purchasing ad space through you guys?
Purchasing or selling?
Either way.
Companies that are walled gardens will not sell. That as a business practice, that's not a technology problem. So again, that's Google, that's Facebook. And then there are some companies that had walls for a period of time, but those are coming down. And so Programmatic is moving into social. So PubMatic works with X and a number of other social companies. And I think more and more social companies will make their inventory available to the open programmatic internet over time. In terms of those companies buying, they'll definitely buy. I don't know about TikTok specifically, but like those companies as advertisers often will buy inventory on the open internet. And so you could see companies like that buying on our platform. Do your listeners know why you started the pod?
I mean, because we were all out of work, and I was trying to figure out why we were all out of work. It was kind of the.
Have you explained this on the pod though?
I mean, I don't know.
I saw your Thanksgiving post, which alluded to some of this, but I don't think you've explained it.
So basically, whole industries, like not just within California, but from food to product to retail to automotive, totally dead all year long. Kind of the
What's dead?
in terms of production. Nobody who's creating content. There was a big strike the year before last, which left a lot of people with ad spend money, and it needed to go somewhere. And it looks like we've been dying to try out this influencer content creator market. Let's go that route. So a lot of the money went there, and it was kind of like this like cash cow. It printed. You spend money, they guarantee return, the quiet part out loud type of a situation. If you're the CMO of a company and your job is to generate revenue for a company with your marketing, and this does this exponentially, you guys are doing conversion rate of like what 1.3 to 3 to maybe 5-8%. They're literally doing 300 to 8,000%. Like,
You think there was an increase in social or influencer marketing specifically off the back of the writer's strike? Like, were those two things connected?
I think there were three. I think there was the writer strike. I think you had the writer in production, because the tail slates for commercials for like Toyota, those are unions. So they can't even shoot a non-union commercial and end it with Toyota, let's go places. The challenge with the timing was that you were coming off a massive year of, say, launching EV, gas, and hybrid vehicles. So you needed marketing materials for all that stuff. You had the election coming up, and then people were pulling money from future quarters to pay for the Olympics. As you see, a lot of companies consolidated. You've Honda and Nissan right now kind of coming together. Some of the agencies for GM got closed up, decided to go for smaller, niche market agencies to be able to create their content. And a lot of productions went overseas just because it's, a third to a quarter of the cost of what it would be to be able to produce a commercial here. People are coming to PubMatic because they know that if they did a traditional media buy, they'd get 30 to 60% less return on their investment than they would if they were to just do it regularly. When you have this influencer aspect of it, you have influential, which, they have now 4 million content creators. They're analyzing 100 billion data points daily. You have Disrupt, which was also purchased by Publicis Group. So now they have two of the biggest influencer content creator marketing. The numbers are insane. And the study was done by Sidewalk Daily. They were basically saying if you had spent $1 on like cosmetic, beauty, fashion brands, they were having returns as high as $13 to $18 per dollar, which is astronomical. With numbers like that,
Yeah.
that's huge. That's massive. Like, how do you as a company even evolve knowing that that's happening on the other side of the fence in terms of returns? Because now I know an actress who literally went to go do some acting work for an AI company that was filming her to be able to create her an avatar of her to then be able to sell products and build an audience on social media that they can then sell to a company that wants to buy her as a person that has an audience for that particular demographic for that brand, which is crazy. And then they're going to bid for eyeballs on an AI. It's like at the end of the day, I'm thinking, what are people going to be doing to be able to generate revenue, to be able to purchase this stuff if AI is replacing everything?
Do you think programmatic impacted your business? Or do you think this was is this the inevitable arc of distribution no longer being a moat for publishing? And now anybody can be a content creator, content created by non-major corporations, i.e. UGC has outstripped corporate media dramatically for the past 4 years. Is this just like the inevitable end of that thread? Or is there more going on here?
If you look at the big picture, right? The camera, which was originally analog, with film, became digital. It's on everybody's camera. Everybody is now a photographer. You're on social media. You now have an opportunity to also be an advertiser. And there's a big push right now for authenticity. Nobody wants the shiny commercial anymore, especially on social, which is where most people are spending their time and getting their entertainment. I've dropped my streaming services. All I have is Disney and Netflix, primarily for the kids. I can watch online, or I'm like an Oak Island geek. I go to get that on Amazon and just purchase the episodes for $12, How has the authenticity mantra kind of affected what you do? Because I mean, I feel like it's pretty recent, probably in the last 3 years. Well, to some people, for a lot of people, being authentic has been just a big part of who they are. But as a composite artist, work has fallen off a cliff. At the same time, that AI has come around, and authenticity is a big deal.
For us, this is probably not a phenomenally complicated dynamic in the sense that our entire set of technology aims to aggregate the entire internet, not just the major media companies. And so this is not a headwind or a tailwind for us. If you are a major media company and your moat 50 years ago was that you had distribution, you owned a printing press and a bunch of trucks and kids on bikes, and no individual could buy all of that and get into that business, like that's been an inevitable decline since the internet was built and distribution became free for anybody with literally zero incremental costs. So I think it's inevitable that the companies that previously owned distribution had a larger share of media budgets than they deserved because they used distribution to pull more money towards their media. That breakdown's been underway for a long time, and I don't see that slowing down. When you hear people talk about, are the upfronts falling apart or crumbling or whatever, like this is just different versions of the same story. So I think if your business is in any way tied to that construct of the world, then there's going to be a redistribution that you need to be honest with yourself about. For us, I think we work with such a broad array of publishers that I think we have a defensible position. I do also think that major brands will still have a tremendous amount of money to spend on the highest quality creative in the highest quality setting. You call it the Super Bowl ad. Like that is always going to have a tremendous amount of value. I just don't know that its share of the overall spend justifies what it got historically. So this is still a great business. I don't think it's like going away, but that you got to be honest with yourself, I think, about that redistribution. And then there's a new dynamic coming in, which you sort of alluded to, which is ability for anyone and everyone to create creative, period, also at an extremely high quality off the back of AI. That's going to change the barriers of entry from an advertiser perspective, which will certainly have an impact on ad agencies and anybody that sort of works with or supports ad agencies.
Wouldn't you think that quality is now defined by the user's experience and
100%
subjective to a point? Like,
I think it always was.
It's kind of like, I came back at like a vehicle launching marketing opportunity, and it was all a bunch of editorial people that were there. They all know each other. They've all been doing this forever. Got into a debate with them, and they were angry that an influencer with a couple million followers that was, in their 20s was more important to Austin Martin and getting their newest vehicle to them, as opposed to giving it to somebody at Kelley Blue Book who has the eyeballs of people that are in the market for purchasing something like that. I feel like the thing that they don't get is that they're competing with each other. Like you and I, you have a car, right? You have a car?
I don't own a car.
You don't have a car. But most people
Subway
in the United States
yes,
have cars, just like they have cell phones. Back in the day, the person who got a hold of Car and Driver or Automobile Magazine got a hold of it because their dad or their grandfather had a subscription, left it on a table or gave it to their kid or was in a doctor's office, something like that. That type of exposure now is gone. And I don't see anybody in the 16 to 23 range on social media telling me which car is best for new drivers. Where's my kid going to go to be able to connect? Why aren't they targeting moms with information about vans? They're too busy competing with one another and keeping secrets from one another because they're afraid that someone's going to steal their idea. And it's like, I feel like at the end of the day, they're going to lose. They're all eventually going to go out of business, like the print did, because they're not trying to engage with the younger audience like Austin Martin's trying to do, because their sales aren't that great and they need something different. They need brand awareness. They need to create a buzz. They need to be able to target people that they wouldn't traditionally target through social media that they would normally target through Kelley Blue, because they've been doing that way forever and it's not working.
Is there frustration that the influence has changed hands, or is the frustration that they don't believe that the new influencers have the right to be commenting on a certain value prop?
I think there's two things. I think it's a little bit of that. It's a little bit of the subjective aspect of quality. To Austin Martin, if that leads to transactions, it's quality advertising, quality marketing. I feel like the worst way to evolve something is trying to go from an old way of doing things into a new thing, unless your brand strategy is evolution. What's the newest way that we can market information and materials and connect with consumers? What's the best way for us to be able to reach our audience and connect with them? Target the people we want to target, but also bring in new customers. You don't want the Budweiser effect. You don't want the issue where you target someone else and offend everybody else you currently have. There's a fear of that. And I think that some of the best marketing people I've ever met have been able to create content, spend money with other companies, have them distribute the content on their channels and wash their hands of the liability. That way they can share that stuff on theirs if it becomes big and it doesn't offend anybody. If it does, then that's them doing it. So no big deal to us because that's not our target consumer.
What's your personal opinion on where this evolution ends up? Like is the pendulum going to swing further towards, call them influencers, call them smaller fragmented publishers who have a sphere of influence that is smaller but maybe more impactful? Or do you think it's gone too far in that direction to the point where we are oversaturated with people giving advice that they have no right to give, and that the pendulum will swing back some, maybe not to where it was, but some to companies that do have a legacy in a specific topic area and, at least according to the friends you're alluding to, may have a better right to give advice on a car or a beer or whatever?
I think with the way things are going and with the type of numbers we're looking at, for every dollar, you're looking at a return of $6.50 to $13 to $18 per dollar of ad spend. That's insane. So clearly that's where people want to be. Shopping's available on TikTok. People are literally getting their entertainment and buying and selling in the exact same place. You're going to have to go there. Now, granted, right, cars, automobiles, appliances, second to third largest expense or purchase you're going to make in your lifetime. There's a little bit more brand equity you're going to have to put into that. But if you think an entire world of production is going to sit around and wait for a Super Bowl ad to run, it's going to go to AI. It's going to have no choice. I can't see an investment in myself to stick around for the bigger jobs that come along that are the payday, when really companies like GM are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on like Netflix to be able to get all of their products into episodes that are running on Netflix. And there's their brand integrity. There's all the brand identity that they'll ever need. They have control over all that stuff. They can put old products in, they can put new products in, and it covers every aspect of that. They can be as much a part of the story as they want. It is totally up to them. With the moves Publicis is making, they just picked up Disrupt and Influential. An advertising agency, to me, would not be making those moves if they didn't know that this was the future of what they were doing, and that if they didn't do that, they might just cease to exist entirely. For you, when granted, your space will always exist, and you guys are just the vehicle for the information. So whether that stuff is authentic or not is up to the person that's advertising, telling that story. Does that affect you at all? Is it part of the big picture when you're looking for people to do media buys?
I think the growth of the internet is and will always be a tailwind for our business. So bringing new content online is good for us. We also participate a lot in the UGC content. We also hear consistently from our largest advertisers that they believe the quality of content, the production value of the high quality open internet, right, to streaming channels and things like that is such that they will, at least for as long as I can tell, want their brand associated with that content. So I feel really good about kind of our business from that perspective, as well as tailwind sort of in relation to user generated content. I also think that what AI is doing to creative is probably a tailwind for our business. So if you think about any friction that's happening within ad buying, campaign setup, activation process, any removal of that friction is good for our business. That should lower the barriers to entry and enable many more types of advertisers to create high quality TV-like creatives, and so they can start participating in the auctions that we make available for our publishers. So for us, that's probably a growth driver.
10 questions.
It's time for 10 questions. Is that a yes or no, or what do you think? 10 questions!
As a CRO of PubMatic, What's your top priority when driving growth in such a competitive and evolving industry?
Always be evolving and trying new things. The only strategy that doesn't make sense in an industry that's changing constantly is to continue doing the same thing.
What would you say is the biggest misconception about programmatic advertising, and how does PubMatic work to change that narrative?
Advertising in general is viewed as a negative part of the internet. Like, we very much believe that the internet heavily exists because the advertising infrastructure enables it to monetize seamlessly. Like, the alternative would be we have to pay for it, either with subscriptions everywhere or everywhere we go, we have to pay a few cents for an article or something like that. It is, despite some of its drawbacks, it is an extremely seamless way of allowing an exchange of value between a publisher and their content and a consumer and their interest in that content. So we spend a lot of time just trying to tell that story.
How do you see the balance between creativity and data playing out in programmatic campaigns?
I should have a really thoughtful answer for you on this one, but having not spent the majority of my career setting up campaigns, I probably can't really comment on the weighted value of when you apply data versus not, versus when you have a good creative versus not, and sort of what the weightings of those are. But as a consumer, I'm most likely to be influenced by an ad when both of those things are correct. Like, I was watching streaming TV last night, and the creative was terrible. And not only am I uninterested in buying that product, but I'm now sort of mad about it. They showed me ads a couple of times, but also irrelevant ads have the same, like a great creative for an irrelevant ad. Like, the amount of times I'll see some medicine that's not relevant to me, it's annoying. So I don't know the weighting, but like, you have to get both of those right if you're going to influence people.
What's the recent milestone at PubMatic that stands out as a proud moment for you and your team?
We recently passed I think it was $10 billion that we've distributed to our publishers. So as a company that was founded on wanting to help content creators thrive, one number that we track and are very proud about is how much money over the lifetime of the company we've put into the hands of content creators and publishers to help ensure that the open internet is a thriving, wonderful place we can all hang out.
How do you approach building and maintaining relationships with advertisers and publishers to ensure that mutual success?
I think the same way I approach any business relationship, which is actually listen and actually care. Like, maybe it's just how I'm built, but I am genuinely interested in our clients' businesses and their challenges. I never sit down focused on what I'm trying to sell them. Like, I really am curious as to what's going on in their business. It's one of the reasons I agreed to do this pod. Like, what you are exploring and trying to understand, I'm curious in as well. That's sort of been my approach to business and sales generally. And I think that's worked well and will continue to work well, especially in an environment that changes as quickly as ad tech.
What's been your most surprising or unexpected takeaway as a leader in the ad tech space?
How early I think we actually are in all of this. So we have started working more and more with retail companies, connected television companies, and connecting the selling of products and those signals from an advertising perspective, and retailers having digital screens within their stores and being able to buy products that you're seeing on screens, and like connecting all of these things together. AI shopping, taking pictures of something, like all of these worlds are coming together. And I feel like we're super early in what all of this technology is going to do.
In an industry where speed and efficiency are everything, how do you foster innovation while staying grounded in what worked?
I think what's worked well for me personally is ensuring you're always questioning why things are done the way they are and continuing them when it makes sense, which sounds like a platitude. Super obvious.
Aren't you always changing the way that you measure data? So if you change the way that you're measuring something, doesn't the outcome or expectation for success constantly change? How do you adapt?
I'm surprised, it just is in a general sense, not even just specific to this. I'm surprised at how often people continue to do something because that's how it's been done, or that's how somebody told them to do it. And I think there are a lot of parts of our ecosystem, and many that work that way today for those reasons. And so I've tried really hard to build into my own brain and into the organization the constant questioning of why. Like, I want to be those people that say why 80 times until you get to the core of something and you say, okay, that's why it works that way. And once you have that understanding, then I think you can make good decisions about what parts of this ecosystem that we've built are strong foundations and should maintain and continue, and which can be evolved and innovated.
What advice would you give to companies just starting to dip their toes into programmatic advertising?
Get ready. It's a wild ride.
What's one strategy or habit that's been key to your success as a leader in ad tech?
Learn to have high output. This is like super simple. On a personal level, I think my biggest differentiator is I can just lock in and get a lot of work done 5 to 10 years into my career before I think I got good at this. Right? The ability to like get into a flow. I can sit in like a coffee shop or a plane or anywhere, and I can like put on my music and I can lock in and get a lot done for extended periods of time. And that is way more impactful than being smart or strategic. Like, there's, in an industry that moves so quick and is so nimble, it's rare, in my opinion, that there's some big strategic decision that just changes everything. Like, this industry is so visible. I can log onto a web page and see who a customer of mine works with. Like, I know all of my competitors, I know everybody they work with, I see the bid requests and responses, I can see everything. So there's no like hidden decision that emerges years later as some pivotal moment. So I think just constantly innovating and moving quickly and getting a lot out the door has been the differentiator.
10 questions!
What advice would you have had for your younger self, knowing what you know now?
Learn to think for yourself. It's really hard though. It's like a muscle you need to build, and it takes repetitions. And there's very few people who I think will teach it to you. The other one would be get in to rooms with people that you think are smarter than you as early in your career as you possibly can. And I say you think are smarter than you purposefully. When I took the job at PubMatic, I was a relatively junior employee. I just happened to be working for the CEO. I would join him in meetings with other CEOs around the industry, CEOs of agencies and CEOs of brands and CEOs of publishers, and all these people that were the titans of the industry, the smartest people in the room. And I, for the first couple of years, didn't participate in those meetings, but I was able to join and listen in. And I realized really quickly that these people generally are no smarter than you. It's not like they are able to think about problems in ways you can't. And so getting in those rooms builds that confidence and also gives you the big thing that they have that you don't, which is just access and exposure. Knowing the types of questions to ask, knowing that you can push on things and change the way things work. The sooner in your career that you can get into those rooms and get that confidence and then learn to think for yourself, the rest sort of takes care of itself.
Where can people find you? If they track you on social or LinkedIn or...
LinkedIn's probably good. Just walking around New York, eating croissants, donuts, the donut, San Pedro.
Nice plug.
With Sean Rice.
Well, thanks for flying out from New York for this and making me drive 2 hours. That was great.
Thanks for driving 2 hours. Thanks for the donuts.
Yeah, definitely. Until next time, sir.
Until next time.
That's a wrap.
Just fix it in post.